I'm non-zero sum James, your companion on this exploration of win-win games. So now we're going to look at some big questions in the economy. But first we're going to start with a concept that helps us understand how we should look at value in the world, which I've applied to happiness and well-being, which I feel is the sort of unit of value that we should be trying to maximize with our economics. Diminishing returns, a path to shared joy. Ever notice that the first slice of pizza is always the best, and then each slice afterwards never quite matches up? Well, welcome to the Law of Diminishing Returns. This is a principle from economics which holds that as an investment increases, returns diminish relative to that investment. On the webpage linked in the description, I have an interactive graph you can play with to see how the law of diminishing returns plays out in various domains. But I'll walk you through some of them. So the idea of diminishing returns is, if we didn't have diminishing returns, you would have your cost, and as your costs went up, your return would also go up. Hopefully at a slightly higher rate than your costs, so you would make a profit. Now what actually happens is, initially, your costs are repaid with greater returns. So as your costs go up, your returns get greater and greater. But as costs continue to go up, that return curve starts to taper off. So you can understand this if you're, for instance, exercising, right? Now, for the first hour of your exercise, you're getting great gains. Let's say you're doing weight training, you're trying to build your muscles. Now, for that first hour, you've got plenty of energy and you're able to lift a lot of weight. You're able to do lots of reps, and each of those reps is really contributing to your muscle growth. But after an hour, after 2 hours, after 3 hours, after 4 hours, you're getting pretty tired. And now you're no longer doing as much on those lifts, on those reps. You're not able to lift as much weight. You're not able to do it with as much enthusiasm. And you're really not getting as much fitness. So what you get is a tapering off as the hours go by. You get the same thing when you're scrolling on social media. So you start scrolling and you're very excited and you're maybe seeing posts from your friends. You see a few cute animals or something like that. That's me anyway. And then eventually you start feeling like you need to keep scrolling and you start to lose interest a bit, but you feel compelled to continue scrolling because you're chasing that dopamine rush. But the dopamine rush is diminishing all the time. So once again, we have diminishing returns. Another example is where you're running a business. Now, you might employ some workers to help you produce your product. But once you've produced enough product to satisfy the demand of your customers, if you keep employing extra staff and they keep creating more of your goods, but you can't sell them, then you're not getting the profit that you could be getting if you had the optimal amount of staff. So the more staff you hire at that point, the less return you're getting from that investment. But the topic I really want to deal with today is this idea of happiness and wealth. As your wealth increases, your happiness also fits to a diminishing returns curve. When you get some money as a poor person, all of that money is really, really useful to you. It can buy food, housing, clothing, all sorts of things that you desperately need. But then at some point, as you get more wealthy, you become comfortable and you have enough to get by. After that, we start to see a drop-off in the amount of happiness that you get from extra money. So somebody who's a billionaire who makes an extra $100 gets a lot less out of that $100 than somebody who's living on the street. And that $100 might be able to get them through a week. Like with the other domains, there is therefore an optimal range of wealth, after which it has diminishing returns. Satisficing. When I first wrote this blog, I was using the term optimization to talk about what I'm doing here, trying to find that sweet spot. But actually, an economist came to me after I'd published and told me the actual term is satisficing. So this is the idea of not trying to get the greatest amount of return, but trying to get the greatest amount of return for the least investment. So this is optimizing for returns relative to costs. This makes a compromise between no investment and investing everything. Happiness and wealth. So when it comes to happiness and wealth, we can take our friend Mr. Fat Cat. He's the one who's full of pizza. Fat Cat is a motorhead, and he gets immense joy from furnishing his garage with gleaming supercars, like a feline Jay Leno, to begin with. But at a certain point, each shiny new automobile adds less joy than the last. He ponders to himself, how can I make more joy? Then he spots Mr. Alleycat and has an idea. He decides to gift one of his cars to Mr. Alleycat. Now, this act of generosity does little to dent Fat Cat's happiness. Remember, he's facing severe diminishing returns on happiness. But for Alleycat, who has never owned anything more than a box, this gift is a game changer. It's a total positive sum game between the two of them. But there's a bonus. This act doesn't just make Alleycat happier, because happiness is itself non-zero sum. It's contagious. Making someone else happier makes you happier too. In fact, a study at Harvard Business School, Feeling Good About Giving, involved giving participants an amount of money, where half of the participants were told to spend the money on themselves and the other half were instructed to spend the money on someone else. The researchers found that those who spent the money on others reported significantly higher happiness. But I hear some people saying, what about incentives? People will often object to this sort of approach by claiming that the poor can only be incentivized by the threat of deprivation that comes with poverty. As Joseph Townsend said, it is only hunger which can spur and goad the poor into labour. But this is obviously not the case. If it were, then the issue of poverty would have solved itself long ago. First of all, there are many people who are poor for reasons outside of their control, such as physical and mental illness, inherited disadvantage, or just bad parenting. But it turns out that more generally, the relationship of income to motivation also has its own diminishing returns. When people have no resources, they feel powerless and unmotivated. And extreme poverty also significantly reduces a person's ability to concentrate, making it more difficult to make good decisions. But every small increase in income can have a profound impact on motivation. This continues to increase until we get to the end of the scale, where people are wealthy enough that hard work becomes unnecessary, and there are diminishing returns on happiness for wealth, as we've covered, leading to diminishing motivation for work. So the motivation curve is a diminishing returns curve beginning very low, rising rapidly, and then declining. So what's the lesson in the tale of these two cats? The law of diminishing returns isn't just a law, it's an opportunity. It's an invitation to redistribute what we have in excess to those who will benefit the most from it, optimizing joy for all. Now, who knew economics could be so warm and fuzzy?